What you guys want from me? Let me the hell go. No. Hey, wait.
I've always felt there was a sort of lack of difficulty in most survival games. I mean, the definition of survival goes as follows: the state or fact to continue to exist or live, typically in spite of an accident, ordeal, or difficult circumstances. But it seems like the majority of survival games neglect that last part, either due to the lack of difficulty in general, or complacency due to repetitiveness. Take any survival game you've played and try to think of what steps you take to survive. Most if not all follow the same criteria of finding food, water, and enemies to protect yourself from the elements of the environment. But there's a bit of a problem with this. Since you've played these games in the past, you've come to know what to expect, the challenges you're likely to face, and you know the ins and outs of the game. Take Minecraft for example. Finding food isn't a problem because, well, you know where to get it. Hay bales, apples from trees, pigs. But there's one game whose difficulty and unpredictability is impossible to grasp. That game is DayZ. DayZ has slowly turned into my favorite game of all time for many different reasons, but in order to explain why, I must tell you the basics of what DayZ is all about, and why I've sunk over 500 hours into it. DayZ at its core is a survival game, one that takes place in the fictional country of Chernarus, a mock-up of Eastern Europe, all amidst a zombie apocalypse. It's an enormous 225 square kilometer map, ridden with open fields, dense forests, large mountains, and countless towns and cities all for you to explore. Chernarus has this very gritty feeling that is difficult to describe with words. It's almost completely void of color, if that makes sense. A post-Soviet landscape that has been put into dismay, way worse than it was before. You spawn on the coast of the map with nothing but a fruit, a glow stick, a bandage, and the clothes you're wearing. Your goal? Stay alive as long as possible by any means necessary. Scrounge the first town you come across for any food, water, and if you're lucky, a firearm. Then go further inland for better gear. But doing all this doesn't come without any risks. At all time, there are zombies roaming the towns, and other survivors looking to reap on what you have. And doing exactly what you're doing at all times. Everybody and everything is a threat. Or so you think. You see, DayZ's best attribute by far has got to be its player interaction. Maybe you'll be wandering a town, and you'll bump into somebody, and decide to speak to them. They ask, "Hey, what's your name?" And before you even get the chance to respond, boom, you're dead. Just like that. You lost everything you had, and now you have to start from scratch. You can choose to learn from your mistakes and not interact with any other survivors, or you can try your luck again. And for me personally, I prefer the latter. The thing with meeting other survivors is you can never get into their thoughts as a player, so you have no idea what their intentions are, or whether they are friend or foe. But there are certain social cues that can let you make an assumption for yourself. If they move around a lot while talking, or if they just sound nervously in the way they speak, can all be different ways of deciphering their intentions. Or if they're French. But even if they meet the criteria of being a quote-unquote friendly player, you can never know if they're plotting against you and waiting for that perfect moment to backstab you. But despite risks, teaming up with others can be pretty awesome. Getting to know each other while you explore the land is honestly a very chill experience. But that question always sits in the back of my mind whenever I meet somebody in DayZ. Most of the time though, the majority of the people that you meet will try to take advantage of you. They don't see you as a friend, they see you as a walking loot sack, and an easy kill. But when you finally find that friend or group to wander the large lands, it could truly be something special. Even the mundane things, like splitting a can of food, finding a gun, and dispersing the ammo between each other, just in case things go south. Or the quiet moments, next to a fire, cooking food, and just having conversations with random people you just met. It's honestly such a relaxing environment, and that's exactly why I love this game so much. And when your friends die, they, well, die. You likely won't be able to find them when they respawn because of the large vastness of the map. And this makes friends' deaths so impactful, because the world really makes it feel like they're gone. Another thing that makes player interactions so impactful is that in DayZ, you generally are more afraid to die, unlike other survival games where death is fairly normalized. The reason why dying in DayZ is so much more impactful comes down to the amount of time you spent on a life, and the amount of loot or friends you have. So the more you have to lose, the less likely you're going to be willing to speak to anybody. So when you actually hear another survivor's voice, it could truly be terrifying. In exchange, a lot of survivors take a more methodical approach to every situation. Hear gunshots in the distance? Why not go around the gunshots and just avoid them? You really need to go to that hotspot of a town for food and water? Or should you just live off the land? Every single choice you make is a risk, one that takes you closer to an unforeseen death. Make no mistake, you think you will never die, because being more careful only prolongs it. It just comes down to the choices you make, and the world determining how your story will end. This makes bandits more common than friendly players, making every player interaction a big unpredictability. Betrayal, stick-ups, hostages, and cannibalism are all common occurrences in the world of DayZ. All of this makes you think twice before speaking to somebody. Now, if you've seen my first video on this channel, you know I'm quite fond of proximity voice chat. There's something so unique and interesting about speaking to people in a spatial environment. But if you take this on a ginormous scale, you have the perfect mechanic. And that's exactly what DayZ did, but on a different level. You might think that DayZ just smacked a bunch of voice filters when you enter certain environments, like any other game, but no. DayZ allows you to speak in 3 different voice settings: talking, yelling, and finally whisper. And these voice settings are vital in the gameplay of Survivors. Imagine this. You're with a buddy, and you both just met somebody else in the town, but you don't really trust the new guy as much as the person you met before them. So what do you do in this situation? You get to a point where the other guy's away from you, and you discuss between each other on whisper mode. Discuss it quietly with your partner. You both agree that this new guy is a bit sketchy. In other words, can't be trusted. A loose end. So you decide when the moment is right to take their life. Some may argue this way of playing is very cruel, but that is the duality of DayZ players. Everybody has a different way of playing this game, and this allows for a force between good and evil. And though it might seem like there's no room for good actions in DayZ, there definitely is some. It's just that most of the time, the bad outrules the good. But even in a lawless land of DayZ, there are some unwritten rules that the majority of survivors follow. Most notably, no mic, no life. It's a pretty simple rule. If you speak to somebody and they don't respond, they shouldn't have the luxury of life. But I think it's pretty cool that as a collective, the DayZ community, even though most don't agree on much, have created universal rules that are pretty much set in stone. Even though they don't have to follow them, the majority do. It's also funny and interesting to think that there's a chance that some random dude created these arbitrary rules that got so widespread to the game's community just by word of mouth. Like folklore of sorts. Now speaking of lore, the history of how DayZ came to be as a game is quite interesting. DayZ started as an Arma 2 mod, and for those that don't know what Arma is a tactical shooter franchise that was created by Bohemia Interactive. And the original creator of DayZ mod, Dean Hall, had the idea for DayZ when he was an Air Force officer and went through survival training out in the wilderness, scrounging for any food and water he could get. So he thought, what if there was a game that showed both the struggle and the length of desperation people go just for a mere can of beans? And oh yeah, zombies. So thus, DayZ was born. And of course, like any game at launch, especially for a mod, there's bound to be some bugs. It's okay though, because they'll be fixed in the future, right? Right?
Oh, qu'est-ce qui se passe?
You know, it doesn't matter though, because the mod is doing successfully. Servers are thriving, the gameplay is fun, and people are enjoying it, even though it is a bit on the buggy side. Bohemia Interactive saw the success and asked Dean Hall directly if he wanted to work on a standalone game, and of course, Dean Hall said yes. And DayZ has been slowly updated for over 10 years now. And now, we have present day DayZ. Another one of DayZ's best attributes has got to be its sound design. And by sound design, I mean the ambience. DayZ's ambience has a very unique touch to it, but the reason it's unique might surprise you. Because of DayZ's immensely large maps, with dense foliage and hundreds of landmarks where players could be, DayZ's sound design takes a more silent approach. This sound design choice creates this atmosphere where for very long periods of time, you're subject to listen to the calming ambience DayZ has to offer. But due to this, any loud sound accompanying the ambience, like a distant gunshot or an explosion, is 100 times more impactful than it normally would be in any other game. DayZ's ambience also makes you feel like you're being watched at all times, but most of the time, you can neither confirm nor deny that statement. But here's something to think about. There have been many times where I've stalked people from afar, and you likely didn't notice I was doing so. So why should I make an assumption that it hasn't happened to me? When I think like this, it becomes pretty apparent that it's almost 100% happened at some point, amongst the foliage in a nearby building, amongst the darkness, all waiting for their perfect moment to strike. DayZ's atmosphere only enforces this feeling with quiet sounds, like crickets, birds chirping, and abandoned buildings that envy a time that once was. Along with all this, DayZ has a sort of sub-genre of sound design that I like to call fake-out sound design. Imagine you're walking in a forest for a while, and then all of a sudden, you could have sworn you heard something that sounded like somebody was behind you. So you turn around to find out that it was actually nothing. So what could have that sound been? So you keep walking, keeping it in the back of your mind. Then all of a sudden, you hear it again. Oh, it's just a twig snapping. And honestly, this type of sound design is genius, intentional or not, because it keeps survivors on their toes for any threats. And whenever that threat isn't a fluke and actually appears, oh boy, let me tell you, it is some of the most fearful and pure heart-racing experiences that can be felt playing a video game. Especially actual player versus player combat. Alright, let's go. Oh my god, I think it's somebody. Get out of the window!
God damn it, god damn it. Oh, that's what happened.
Hey, buddy! With the fear of an inevitable death in DayZ, there comes a time where you're eventually going to be face to face with another survivor in a direct combat situation. These PvP scenarios can differ from each other vastly, but there's nothing more terrifying in DayZ than close quarters combat. Because of DayZ's proximity voice chat, you can actually choose to speak to your enemies, which makes a tense situation even more terrifying. PvP fights can last anywhere from a couple seconds to around 30 minutes. And yes, you heard me right. The reason fights can be so lengthy is that players try to get into each other's heads, figuring out where they would go. Every bush and every corner is an unknown threat that must be tactically thought about, or you go down without a second thought. And this is subconsciously funneled into you as you're playing. But if you manage to find body armor or a helmet and sustain just the right amount of fire to your protective gear, you may just go unconscious. And if you wake up, you have just a mere second to grab your gun off the floor, assess the situation, and finally find and kill the threats. All while you're probably bleeding, low health, and can barely move. And even then, the fight is never over. Other players might hear the gunfire in the distance and see it as an opportunity for a quick battle and free loot. And the majority of PvP fights in DayZ, unlike a lot of first-person shooter games, are mostly more strategic than whoever has the faster reaction time. All of this shows the brutal reality DayZ has to offer, and how its unpredictability can be something that makes this game a true survival game. So now that I've explained what most of DayZ has to offer, many are probably thinking, why even play DayZ if it's all for nothing, and you die in the end? And well, it's not going to be a short answer. DayZ at its core, while mainly being a survival game, it's also a sandbox game too. And this means fundamentally there isn't really a goal, but because of DayZ being a sandbox game, this means you as the player can pretty much do whatever you want, and make your own goals. Is there a bandit causing havoc in a town? Gather up a team and try to take down the threat. Negotiate a peace treaty.
Come on out and surrender, man.
Or even break the bandit's leg and force him to surrender. Make a shop. Make a podcast. Take hostages. Be a cannibal. Be a stealthy sniper. The possibilities are pretty much endless. But what got me into this game was the vast amount of DayZ YouTube channels that document the best adventures they all go on. The first video I saw on DayZ was a VOD from the YouTuber JSchlatt. This VOD has it all. Intense and hilarious moments, friendship and betrayal, badass moments, and overall just not knowing who to trust. It all plays out like a movie in front of your own eyes.
1, 2, oh shit! No, you can't. Oh fuck, you did that prematurely. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to see that.
And that last part is exactly what got me hooked into DayZ as a concept. Every life is different and unique, giving you your own story. And this statement is even the whole game's marketing tactic. I guess hell, it worked on me. But what JSchlatt was playing in that VOD is not the original map, Chernaris. It's a modded map called Namalsk. Namalsk is an island set in the Bering Sea, making freezing temperatures the main issue for survivors. Due to this, you have to defrost any food and water you find. This makes players set up fires as choke points all throughout the map, which lets off fresh smoke, alerting any nearby players of your location. Now Namalsk, in my opinion, is the perfect form of DayZ, because well, I think the original DayZ maps are a bit too large. And while each map has its place, I believe the main vanilla maps are more focused on survival, while Namalsk is player interaction focused. Due to Namalsk's small size and select few towns, player interaction is almost guaranteed, making teaming up with players way easier. But that does not mean players are still not a threat. If anything, players are much more of a threat on this map just for the reason that there's so many people on such a small island, in turn making survival much more difficult. But due to Namalsk being small, it sort of eliminates that open world charm that comes with the main vanilla maps. You see, on maps Chernaris and Livonia, there are road signs, landmarks, and trail maps scattered all throughout the world. This means you can look at a road sign, and it will tell you where you are and what city or town is coming up next, letting you consider what actions to take and where to go. And oh yeah, since DayZ is a hardcore survival game, the map isn't just given to you when you press M. No, you actually have to find the map. And even if you manage to find one, it still isn't that simple. Have no idea where you are? Good luck. Because with the map, it just won't show you. You have to use clues in your environment, like the town or city names, roads, landmarks, and those aren't always around. So you have to go on a journey to go find these places and triangulate your position. So then, and then only, can you finally navigate to where you want to go. Now you just have to keep track of where you are and not lose your footing. But if you can't find a map, that's fine, because there are a handful of other ways to traverse the world. First off, if you just wander mindlessly, it's quite common that you'll just end up in the middle of nowhere, with no sense of direction. But if you use common sense and follow like distant power lines, that's generally where you'll find some sort of civilization, and any remnants of any loot left behind. Or if you don't know which direction you're headed, you can figure out by seeing if the sun is setting or rising. And if it's rising, it's in the east, and if it's setting, that's the west. But what about nighttime? Nighttime in DayZ, at least on official servers, is one of the most underappreciated and most terrifying parts of this game. The reason this comes down to the sheer size of DayZ's maps, like we know already, and that DayZ's nights are absolutely pitch black. I mean, you can only see a couple meters in front of you, shrinking of what's known to a couple thousand meters to only a few. And one of the only ways to navigate in the dark is by turning on a light source. The problem with this is at any point amongst the darkness, there could be somebody lurking there. They spot your light, and they go towards it like they're a little bug. But there is a silver lining. Instead of turning on your light source and attracting everybody close by, you use stars to navigate. DayZ actually has a very accurate night sky that is on par with the real world. And by scanning the sky, you can actually find certain constellations that face certain directions. But the one you should be looking for is the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. These star groups consist of a shape that almost resembles a pot or a ladle. And in order to find north, you have to find both star groups and look at the edge of the Big Dipper's pot to the beginning of the Little Dipper's handle. And there you have it, the North Star. And this star is almost directly north and barely moves in the night sky. But if it gets cloudy in DayZ, this is what I like to call navigation hell. Because with clouds, you almost have no way of knowing where the sun is, and of course there's no visible stars. And here's something you need to understand. DayZ is a game of chance. One life you'll be thriving in the environment, eating tons of food, water, and have enough firepower to give an army. The next life, you'll be drinking dirty water out of ponds, scrounging the forest for any morsel of food, sick, cold, no sense of direction, and no hope. This is one of the joys that makes DayZ such a captivating experience. You have no idea where the wind is going to take you, and there are times where I'll be passing by a location, and I'll remember faint details of past lives. A friend or group of people I met, conversations, an insane gunfight, an old place of struggle, a place I waited out the night, a place I cooked food. I'm genuinely serious when I say I have very vivid memories from this game. It really is crazy, and I don't think any other modern title can come close to recreating that feeling. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. The reason why people play DayZ is very subjective. Some play for the heavy survival aspect, where one choice can determine whether you live or die. Some play for the exploration. Some play for the realistic heart-pumping gunfights. Holy shit! A game where no matter your choice, no matter how much perseverance and resilience you can mutter, you're eventually going to come to a situation where being dead is the only outcome. A game where friendships can end with a singular bullet. A game where despite how much it makes me want to lose my mind, with all its problems and gripes, there's just something special about this game that keeps me coming back. It's the struggle. This game truly does not hold your hand. And unlike most modern titles today, there's no leveling system, there's no skins or unlocks. It's just pure, real survival. And for that, I praise it. This is DayZ. This is your story.